Good morning, everybody. It is the morning mindset for a Monday morning, 8/19/2019. So what a wonderful time for me. I love doing the Monday morning mindsets because normally I'm working over the weekend and I kind of miss doing them, and I don't get as much energy going on Saturday and Sunday, even though I do kind of work on those days at times. And so if you're new to the morning mindset, welcome. If you've been here before, you kind of know the format. Get a pen, get a notebook, plan to make some good notes. We usually cover a couple simple subjects, if not one or two. And this morning, there's a really important subject that I feel is going to be very helpful to you guys when you're thinking about your future, when you're thinking about taking action and you're thinking about what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And we're going to talk a little bit about where people get stuck with this a little bit as well today. So our subject today is set your navigation first. Your goals are obvious. Now that seems like a tall statement. A lot of times you might sit down and write down your goals. Brian Tracy, for example, in his in one of his books that I really enjoy reading, it's the Psychology of Sales, talks about setting goals and how you should write down 100 goals. You should write down as many as you possibly can, and then there's a 30-day plan that he also has in there where you kind of isolate that down to things that are actionable. Now, I don't have anything against the idea of writing down your goals. Now, it's a good practice to sit down and say, what do I actually want to accomplish with my life? Certainly. Well, I have 12 companies that I manage. I have a sales organization that I manage. I have over 30 employees as well that I'm directly in charge of. And you would imagine in my world, there's a consistent need to write my goals down or kind of structure the things that I need to accomplish. And although I have done that at times, and at times that is useful, it's not real useful. Apologize, guys. Let me turn off my phone. I always forget to do that. So 1 second. All righty, and that is done. So let's talk about what's more important than writing down a large list of goals and having a mind about all of the things that you're trying to do in life, and kind of get a little bit better measure of what you can do immediately and what really does matter and what's important to daily action. So set your navigation first. Your goals are obvious. Setting goals must serve your immediate actions. So if you are working on the things that you're trying to accomplish, one of the most important things you can keep to measure is being tactical, okay? And what that means, being tactical, is that on a daily basis, you're structuring your day and trying to figure out what you're going to get done by the end of that day. I do this on a consistent basis. Now, some of the days that I have, for example, my Saturday, I get off at noon, even though I get in here at 4, and it's an 8-hour period for me. So that day especially is very important for me to say, okay, I've got 8 hours. What am I going to get done today that's moving towards the goals that I have? Okay, navigation, or a sense of direction, is an opportunity within your own psychology on a consistent basis to be able to calibrate your day. You have a navigation, okay? And the targets that you're after really most of the times are very obvious. I'm trying to make more money. I want to do better today than I did yesterday. I've got certain things I've got to learn to be better at doing the things I'm doing. For example, if you're selling product, maybe you need to get a lot better at the dialogue, how to talk about the product, how to understand it well enough to where you can explain everything about it, just as an example. That is a tactical thought. Today, I want to make 40 phone calls. Yesterday, I made 30. Or last Monday, I was kind of a wash. My weekend kind of just took over on me, and I really wasn't working that hard until 1 o'clock on Monday. Let's just say that might be what it is. Well, when you're looking at the day and you're thinking about how to be tactical, you'll realize that in the back of your mind are your goals and where you're trying to go. And not the ones that you've written down, but the ones that are a lot more obvious, okay? And so the reality is I very infrequently will sit down and write 100 goals down, okay? I'm very clear in my mind on a fairly consistent basis of where I'm headed. and what it is that I'm trying to do. And the more I think about my tactical actions today, the less confusing it is about where I'm headed. And it would almost seem that there would be more of a grand opposite of reflection that you need to do to kind of know where you're trying to be in 6 months, 2 years, whatever it might be. Again, that's a valuable thought process, but not on a consistent basis. On a consistent basis, when you're thinking about a particular thing you're trying to accomplish, for example, the Consult for Health joint venture that we're working on, I did a tremendous amount of work for that this morning. And my vision towards the future is really more about Tuesday of next week when we have our first big rep on meeting that we're going to be holding, our webinar, and what's going to be accomplished at having as many people on that webinar as possible, and what the steps moving past that are directly, and serving in the first 3 hours of my morning today that momentum, that ideology. So that momentum and that ideology is consistent towards sending out information to potential reps this week through some of our partners, getting them onto the webinar. Hopefully we're going to have good numbers, a few hundred people on there. And then what immediately after those actions are going to have to be available to these reps? What do I have to have on that webinar to get into their minds the high value in working in this new business model that we have? That's looking into the future. Those are the goals that are associated with that. But it had much more to do with the tactical actions that I plan to take today in order to measure that out in a shorter period of time. Okay, be tactical as your foundation for building a future. Okay, you've got to start with the foundation. The foundation is not setting 100 goals of where you're trying to go. You might think it is. Okay, it's more, well, where am I trying to get to by the end of today? And how is that going to result in the things that I'm trying to accomplish by the end of the week? And by the end of the week, how is that going to affect the things that I'm trying to actually fulfill by the end of the month? That mindset is the most important mindset you can have. And it can be a little unnerving because it requires action. In order to think more tactically about the goals that you have or the future that you're building and identify what has to be accomplished today in order to foundationally move forward into the next few days, which thereby is going to cast an opportunity and potential for the next few months, you have to be very tactical. Well, this is what happens. While you get into the mode of doing this more often, every day, what am I going to accomplish by the end of the day? How does that affect what's going to happen this week? And where does that really affect my immediate future? The bigger atmosphere of where you're headed in the next year begins to become way more realized in your mind. You start to see the actions and activities that you're doing, and you can sit back and say, well, if I kept this up, if I kept coming in every day, acting more tactical foundationally on a consistent basis, it's obviously going to end up heading this direction based off of my current results. That is when your goal setting becomes a lot more realized and a lot more clear. How many of you have gotten into an opportunity just to work really, really hard at it for a minute because you thought it was working towards certain goals, just to realize one of two things? Number one, it's not your path. Number two, a surprising number of better things about what you're doing kind of became realized as you began talking with other people, engaging, collaborating, and your vision, which may have been written down in 100 goals, even within just a couple of weeks, has completely changed because the experience that you gained by being focused and staying tactical changed very important aspects about how you see the future working. Okay, that's called gaining experience. Okay, and that is the most important, most foundational thing that you can do. So again, set your navigation first. Your goals are obvious. Okay, we know what we want to accomplish. Okay, we might not know that down to a micro element where writing 100 goals down might be very useful if we're in a moment of reflection and we want to be very clear about where we think we're heading in life. But by sitting down and staying tactical and understanding, because you have been very productive of your capabilities. Okay. At first, if you haven't gone through this experience and you haven't focused in this way, you're not really clear a lot of times of what you personally can accomplish. Now, I've become so good at this that if I need to sit down and let's say write content or I've got to create a contract, I can almost calculate to the minute exactly how long it takes me. Me and my wife laugh about this sometimes. It could be 20 pages into a proposal that I've got to develop, and I can sit down and look at that because I've always thought this way and continue to think this way. I'm like, all right, that's going to take me exactly 4 hours. And I know that because I've consistently looked at the environment that I'm in on a daily basis from a tactical point of view, right? What can I absolutely knock out today that's going to affect the things that need to happen this week, that's going to give me bigger vision into the things that may happen this month? And as you continue that process, you start looking 2 months into the future, 3 months into the future, 6, a year, 2 years into the future, and you're much better at estimating how long things are actually going to take. Also, are you going to need help? Are you going to max out? Is it a collaborative effort that's going to be necessary? Well, it's very difficult to measure those things out. Some early mistakes that I've made in my career is I believed I needed people, got to hire people, got to come up with money so I can bring people in and they can help me with the things that I do. Well, at this point in my career with the people that do work for me, they do things for me that I know I cannot actually manage myself personally and measure out appropriately without help. But the only reason I know that so well at this point, and I don't waste a dollar when it comes to actually paying payroll, is because I have gone through this process for years now. I know what I can do. I know what I'm capable of. And in order to really get to where you can measure things out intelligently, if you do need to hire, if you do need a team, if you do need to outreach, if there's other collaboration and other talent that you need in your programs, there's no way to really know how much of that you actually need and that you're not wasting money unless you on a daily basis are going through this process and you know clearly that you're maxing out, that your navigation is absolutely on mark and focused. Okay. So my good friend Jack Zufelt from the DNA of Success, in his mind, goal setting doesn't work at all. And you know, I have a variance to that to a degree. I agree with that because as you work tactically and you are clear in your mind about what you're going to accomplish and how that works, things are always changing. All right, business growth is exactly what business growth is stated. It's change, right? If you're going to be making more money, we're developing a larger enterprise, being more capable of dealing with more pressure, potentially more customers, let's just say, or more contacts if it has to do with business development or sales. The reality is that growth requires differential. You're going to change. And the best way to predict that change and understand it is to stay as tactical as you possibly can on a daily basis so you can look into the day, into the week, and into the coming months with clear navigation of what you can accomplish. Okay, that's the most important thing you can do. So if you're just getting into business or you're new at sales or any of those things, I'm not saying don't sit down with your spouse and write down the goals that you have, right? We want to buy a new house. We want to be able to afford 2 vacations a year. I want to put my kids through college because you want to be able to know what your numbers are. Okay, it's a big Grant Cardone thing is know your numbers, right? So you want to know what your numbers are. What are you trying to get to? But that is a fraction of the actual work that you have to put in to understand where you're headed. Okay, goals are a framework. Okay, the internal measure of actual accomplishing anything is staying tactical on a daily basis and understanding how to get into that part of yourself that's navigating forward in such a fashion that you know exactly how much you can accomplish personally. You know how that's going to affect the people that are most immediately involved in your environment, partners, sales individuals, whatever it may be, customers, and how that's going to grow in the next week to month to 3 months. Once you start getting that navigation down, what's going to happen over the next 6 months becomes a lot more predictable. Okay, where you're going to be heading in the next 2 years will be a lot more predictable. If I keep taking these actions where I've stayed tactical daily, weekly, and monthly, I can tell from the activity of growth that more than likely it's going to continue this direction. And at this certain point, I'm going to be maxed out and may need people. You'll become so much more clear about what you need to accomplish because you're focused in such a manner. So if I can bring you anything this week, okay, Monday morning, here we are, morning mindset, first thing of the week, be tactical. All right, be tactical as a foundation for building your future today. Focus on what you're going to get done before the end of the day. At the end of the day, if you, and this is I talk about this a lot, if at the end of the day you did not get further than you were when you started your day, and this is a sensibility, right? It's not necessarily here's my documents that I did and here's the 10 people I talked to. It's a sensibility. You feel it, you know it. I got through this day and I am further than when the day started. That will help you go home accomplished, number one. But number two, it will help you start setting that navigation that's internal, because it's not always clear. Okay, if you're not sure what you're doing with your life or where you're headed, that navigations is almost just like spinning in a big circle. It's like you're stuck in a magnetic pole somewhere where it's just going in big circles, right? The way you set that navigation isn't by setting goals. That's your framework. It's by being tactical today on what can I get done to move towards those goals by the end of the day. And let's say it is that you're completely unclear what you're doing with your career and you're going to change whatever it might be. Well, then your tactical activity for today may be deep study, research, and very difficult questions you have to ask yourself with a refusal to end that day without giving yourself an answer. Give yourself a deadline. So if you're in the middle of figuring out where that navigation may be pointing, don't give yourself some open frame of time, a week, 2 months, to just consider, sleep on it, all those things. Say, okay, I'm smart enough and I understand enough where I'm headed and what I want. I have to make a solid decision so I can set my navigation. So maybe that's what you're doing today, right? Give yourself very strict deadlines if you don't have that navigation set and you need those things in place, okay? So set your navigation first. Your goals are obvious. Setting goals must serve your immediate actions. Be tactical as your foundation for building the future. So again, I didn't talk too much about this, but setting goals. Oh, and I've got one of my team members trying to call me. I'll call him right back. So setting goals must serve your immediate actions. Your goals should be about today. Your goals should be about what you do today and how it affects your next week and the people involved with you going into the next week. And your goals should be casting the vision of what you did today that's affecting that process forward and how that looks into the immediate future of the next few weeks. Okay, so set your navigation properly, guys. Let's have an incredible week. Thank you for joining me here, and I will be back again tomorrow morning.